Hi, I'm Richard Westerby and welcome to the IVF Daddies podcast. Today we have the honour of having my best friend Emilia Varfis here to talk to us. Hello Emilia.
Hi, how are you?
I'm very well, thanks. How are you doing?
Very good, very glad to be here.
It's an honour to have you. I've known Emilia since day one of university back in the day. We literally were sitting next door to each other in a conference hall and you were writing something in Greek which reminded me of it was vadieme, which means I'm bored.
Correct.
And we've been friends ever since.
But we haven't been bored.
We have not been bored. That is very true. Emily, you are the CEO of Velos Advisory and Will de Vie, two very successful companies. And we're here primarily today to talk about egg freezing and how you've created your family. 12 years ago, we were sitting over a bottle of wine and we had a very meaningful conversation because you had offered my ex-husband and I to have your eggs to create our family. And to this day, it still pains me that I said no. But I said no. Tell me, what did you think? How did that feel?
I did it because I knew how keen you were to have a family. And at the time, it was all kind of very novel to all of us. And the one thing that I wanted is to make it to help you in any way I can. So since you were looking to figure out how to do this, the only natural thing that I could think about was making that offer to you.
That's amazing. Still to this day, I'm like, wow.
And you said no.
And I said no.
So
Sorry.
How did it feel? It was, for me, it was very natural to offer it. It was a little bit weird to hear you say no, but I totally understand why you did.
Yeah.
I might never forgive you, but...
You're here. Actually, we're 12 years older. We're now having cups of tea.
Yeah.
That's how boring we've got. And to this day, I'm always going to be thankful for that. And you were very much by my side really throughout the whole navigation of building my family. And it was very unknown, really, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was just one of those, what am I doing?
But you researched everything and you tried so hard to find the optimal solution every step of the way, which brought you to where you are today as well.
Yeah, I know. Well, enough about me. Let's more about you. So we went through the whole process. Obviously, we have your godson and goddaughter, in effect.
We do.
Both downstairs currently. How did that then manifest into your life and changing what you were thinking and the perception of everything?
First of all, I think what you created is one of the most beautiful families that I know. And seeing a gay couple making all of this effort at the time when things were not as commonplace as they are now to do it was something that I was going to support 100% every step of the way. But all I see is two parents that had beautiful twins and that they are showered with love. I think what happened at the time is that you then decided that you were going to become an ambassador towards fertility and surrogacy and everything. And at the time, these things were not discussed very much. And I remember being around about 36 years old, and you just said to me at the edge of your living room, you might have to think about freezing your eggs. And I was like, what are you talking about?
Like a sidebar comment.
So not ready to do that yet. And just go away. And a couple of years later, you nudged me again, and I was like, I don't know, and I'm not sure, and go away, I'm not ready yet. And
when
then
you say you weren't ready, what do you mean?
I didn't think about when is the perfect age, what is the right time to do it. At the time, it wasn't really known for women to freeze their eggs or that it would be the best thing to do. Mm-hmm. All I knew is that at some point I thought I was going to find love and I was going to have a child naturally at the time that I needed to have it, and I didn't need to think about alternative preparations, let's put it that way. And at the time, I was building a career. So I was bouncing around Europe. I was building the company that I was working for, building an M&A division.
So basically, it was almost like you were creating a career and an environment, a stable financial environment to be able to then think about it in the future, or you just hadn't even thought about family?
I had thought about family, but I always thought family would come when I would fall in love. And at the time, I was also working in business, and I wasn't willing to stop working in business for the purposes of doing something different. I thought that it was all going to fall naturally into place.
Fall into place.
Yeah.
Destiny, fate.
So at the time I was working in the city, I was working very hard, long hours, traveling a lot. And there was a moment, a light bulb that said to me that maybe I should listen to you and maybe I should try to do this egg freezing process. So what happened at the time was that I was literally, I think, 1 year into a new pretty demanding job. And I decided that I wanted to go to take the plunge, to freeze my eggs. And I didn't know where and I didn't know how. And I didn't necessarily have the financial capacity to do it in the States because that would have been an expensive process. So I did my research about where I could do it in Europe. And I found, I am Greek, and I chose that I spoke to various doctors in Greece, and I figured out that it was possible to do it in Greece.
Yeah.
It was costly, financially feasible to do it in Greece.
Yeah.
And I decided not to tell hardly anyone, especially my work. And I just told them that I just need to take 2 weeks off for personal medical reasons.
So why didn't you want to tell anybody?
Because I didn't know how this would unfold. I didn't know how I would feel. I didn't know the effects it might have on me to the whole cycle.
As in effects, as in physically or emotionally?
Physically, emotionally, and everything. My mother knew.
Yeah.
Although my mother had seen it on TV and suggested it. And she was never someone that pressured me that I had to have children at a certain time or anything else. So I just decided that this was a very personal choice. So you knew, I knew, my mother knew.
Yeah.
And another friend of mine who was a fertility specialist actually knew as well. So when I chose to do it, I knew that I had to cut off from working intensely for a period of time. So I timed it very well and I decided to go for it.
And when you were, I really want to think about and think through that emotional, you couldn't tell anybody. It's like, to me that it's almost, but you didn't feel like it was something you wanted to discuss. Is that because
I wanted it to be my personal journey at the time. I told tons of people afterwards, but at the time I didn't know what to say. I didn't know why I should. It was a choice that I was making for myself, and I just wanted to keep it personal.
Amazing. Yeah. And I think, if I look back on the surrogacy journey that I did, it's the same thing. I kept it very quiet because I didn't want to be judged. I didn't want people to say, why are you doing this?
I will tell you what happened though, which was very interesting. So I on the first day of having to use the injections and everything else, I chose to check myself into a hotel in Greece to stay away from my family, to do this whole moment of commencement of this process all on my own. And I remember that through the first week of injections, I had to go and get some tests with my gynecologist so that they can determine how many eggs were growing. Yeah. And at the time, that gynecologist had a Swedish assistant, teacher, a support person. I can't remember what they were, but they congratulated me for doing it. They said that this is not common in Greece. I'm very brave to have made that decision, and good on me, because it wasn't something that they saw very frequently in Greece.
So if I could have one outcome from doing everything with regards to IVF daddies, that is women realizing and understanding and destigmatizing egg freezing, I would be super happy.
I think things have changed radically since I've done this process as well. So when I just told you what I was told by a foreign woman working in the Greek medical industry system. But now, so the rest of my journey about my family, which we'll get into, now when I went into an IVF clinic, there were young girls, just as young as I am, of course, which are late 20s, that were freezing their eggs because now they know those first few days.
Okay, so you've checked yourself into a hotel in Athens. How were those few days? You were sitting on your own injecting. Talk through the injection process as well, but how were you feeling at that time?
So the first couple of days, I didn't know, or I didn't feel safe to inject myself. So I would go to a pharmacy and ask them to help me with the injections. I was very fortunate because I had a very good friend that was visiting Athens that weekend, and he is a fertility specialist. So he was basically telling me, this is what you're going to feel, this is what's going to happen or not. Don't be scared and everything else. So I felt like very protected during that process and supported. And then 2 days in, I started injecting myself. I found it very easy. I'm quite resilient generally. I didn't find it to be a strange process. And I don't think I felt any weird side effects. I didn't feel in the first week, because I'll get to the second week. I felt nothing. Nothing was bothering me. I was fine. I went back home after the 2 days. I kept on going. I just made sure that I did things at the right time and on time. And then 5 days later, I had to go to the doctor, as I said, because he had to check how many eggs were growing. And I was told that I had a football team in my uterus because there were about 12 eggs. They said to me they were very impressed and pleased with the results so far.
Amazing. So the injections, big needles, small needles?
Small needles.
Where?
Small needles, thin, very tiny, like the ones you can't really feel.
Oh, okay.
On my stomach. I think I was told at the time that there's a 4-week process or a 2-week process which you can undertake to build your eggs during this process. The 2-week process, for a person that was as busy as I, was the only way to go.
Yeah. I think now everything's 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So we've passed week 1. You've got a football team in your uterus. Week 2.
Week 2.
Sounds like there's a story.
Week 2 was the part where everything had to happen at a certain time. So there was an injection that I was given, I think, on the Friday, and the harvesting was done maybe 6 days later. So there was a booster, is what they called it. And that was from the Monday where I started the injections. I got the booster on the Friday. And from there, it just basically instructed my body to keep producing eggs. And then there was a specific other visit that I had to go to the doctor where from that moment of that last injection that he gave me, I had 72 hours, if I recall, upon which then I had to walk into the hospital and have the harvesting done. During that time, I flew to Milan. I had 3 business meetings and then came back on the clock to be able to...
So you can live your life around the injections.
Of course.
You just have to make sure that you're there for scans, and
you have to be there on a certain day for scans. You have to be there on certain days within that 2-week process. There are moments that you have to go to the doctor. They have to check you. They have to give you the booster, and then they have to give you that final injection, which is the catalyst before you go in for the harvesting. Your life is fine. You keep on going. No drinking of alcohol or anything else. Be healthy. So I went to an island. I flew to Milan. I did everything that I could do and was able to do, so long as I didn't miss a boat and I didn't miss a plane or a train, and I got back at the right time. Otherwise, if I had been late, for example, I'd have lost the moment for the harvesting to take place. And then it all happened, and that was fine. And they told me what they harvested, which was like, they put me in hospital under a local, and I went under for a quick day anesthesia sort of thing.
So you were
general anesthetic for half a day. The whole process lasted half a day. I went in the morning, general anesthetic, and about 2 hours later, I was awake again and just had to recuperate and left the hospital. By which point they told me how many eggs they had harvested, if one survived or if they all survived, which they did. And that was it. Now, what I was saying, what goes through after week 2 is that I bloated up a little bit. So I did feel that I had cankles. I that was the moment where I was like, okay, how do I go back to London? How do I go back to work? I felt bloated, but that was the moment that after 10 days back to normal, it's as if it never happened. The process. For me, it's the best thing I ever did. I literally immediately felt a ton of relief off my back because I knew that I had bought time and no biological clock was ticking anymore. I had eggs in the freezer. Amazing. It is one of the best decisions I've ever made. So I owe you a massive thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. I'm just thrilled you did it. So how many eggs did they get?
They got 13 eggs, of which I was told that there's, and I don't know how to define it, but there's a good level 1 quality and a level 2 quality. Mine were all level 1, which is the top quality.
So that gave you comfort and peace of mind that they were good.
I was told that I had a very decent amount of eggs, first of all, for one effort. And I've heard other stories from other friends, and they haven't had the same numbers. They've got 5 eggs, 3 eggs, 2 eggs. Even you had said to me that at the age that I had chose to do it, which was at 40 years old, I was on the downturn, if you like.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. But it's, for me, therefore, at that age, to have 13 eggs was a roaring success.
So we first started discussing egg freezing when we're the same age, when you were 36.
Yeah.
What age did you finally get around to doing it?
So I did it when I was 40 years old, because I decided that at that point I should listen to you. And I didn't think it was late. You had said to me, because I had to have certain tests to see if I could go through the process. And you were saying, well, for your age, it's okay. And the results are fine and everything. So I had realized that it was a later age. Therefore, I didn't know what results I was going to get. So I had said, for me, 40 was my crunch time. I'd realized that my bubble of fantasy of finding love at the right time and doing whatever needed to be done to create a family, at which point, for whatever way that it would be created, I had to build a buffer. So I decided to go through with the process.
So 40 was your cutoff age?
40 was my cutoff age to freeze.
Yeah.
And then I gave myself, this was my discussion with myself, 5 or 6 years to decide, if I had not been in a relationship, whether I would be choosing a sperm donor to do it myself to create an embryo. Because one of the things that I was also asked at the time was, did I want to create embryos over just freezing eggs? And I did not want to create embryos. I wanted to just freeze eggs.
Did they explain why?
Because they told me that it might be healthier at that age to create the embryos, or easier for embryos to have some embryos at the time.
So you've done this, you're going into this process and they say to you, do you want to make embryos? How did that feel?
Part of my self-care is that I have a very good acupuncturist, and he specializes in fertility. So he was also very supportive at the time when I had told him as well. And he basically said to me, why just freeze eggs? Why not also create embryos? Buy sperm, do whatever. And I just mentally wasn't ready to do the embryo process. I wanted to leave that to fate, nature, see how that would go. That was a decision that I was not ready. I wanted to make that decision at a later date. So I didn't find it strange for him to ask me, but I found I couldn't decide.
So it wasn't the clinic that was asking if you wanted to freeze eggs or embryos. It was your acupuncturist who was asking you.
I didn't actually go to a clinic. I just went to my gynecologist and asked him about the process, and he decided to help me because he knew within his hospital that this is something that he could take care of. So it wasn't a question from my gynecologist or any clinic.
Okay, fine. Before we jump into the next step, which is part of which I really want to talk about because it makes me smile. You've been through the process, age 40, you've got 13 top quality eggs. What do you then think? How are you feeling?
I'm feeling massively relieved that I haven't got people breathing down my neck, that I am too late, might not have be able to have children, because now I'm very proud and I can say, guys, I've frozen my eggs. I'm good. I can sit pretty and get on with my life just as I've wanted to. And they're right there. And in fact, they're really good quality ones. I didn't know exactly what that meant, but for me, it was as if a ton of pressure had just come off my shoulders.
Amazing. And was it pressure you even knew you had?
No. It was a little bit of pressure that I started feeling towards the time that I was reaching 40, hence why I decided to listen to you. But it was apparently a lot more pressure when I felt the relief of it.
Interesting. So you didn't realize that you were under the pressure until after you'd done the process, and then all of a sudden you have this relief.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And the one thing that I will say is that obviously I realized that at my age, this was a very successful effort. And in fact, I'm very pleased to say that even one of my best friends, who was also in a very similar situation to me, chose to follow suit. And in Greece, did it very privately, on her own, barely told me, just only at the end, at the age of 42, and she got 13 eggs as well of premium quality. So she and I literally were like, chin, we've done really well.
And how is it to know that you impacted somebody else?
It made me feel very good because I think I gave her a lot of breathing space as well.
Thank you for doing that for her. So we've now fast forward a few years. You've got these eggs on ice. Tell us what happens next.
So the fairy tale is that I
met a boy.
I met him 4 years ago, and he's a lovely person who didn't quite know where we were supposed to go together as a relationship until maybe about 1.5 years ago, if not just a little bit more, where I basically said to him that the grace period is over, if you like. I've basically chosen that I want to have a child and I would like to have it with him, obviously since we're together. And he agreed. So we decided that we would try naturally, but with a cutoff of a certain time where we would then defrost the eggs.
Defroster. This has been absolutely fascinating, hearing your egg freezing story. And I know that there'll be lots of people out there who appreciate everything you said. So thank you very much for sharing that with us.
It's my pleasure. I'm very glad to have been part of this effort with you guys, promoting all of these initiatives and these ideas.
Oh, I feel that there's enough. We could keep on talking. So I might ask you to return so we can follow on from this to see where you are now. Would you be up for that?
Absolutely, and anytime you want.
Oh, brilliant. Well, anyway, thank you so much. And
thank you.
We love you.
Love you too.
If you enjoyed this episode and would like to learn more about IVF and surrogacy, then please subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. Also, please share and follow our social media handle @IVF Daddies. We are here to answer any questions and to guide you through this very personal process.